Welcome, college basketball fans, to the Full Court Press Podcast with LT and Sammy D. This is the podcast that brings you legendary stories from college basketball's golden era and dives in deep with a current analysis of today's game. Get ready for the most energetic and entertaining college basketball podcast around. Let's get it.
Sam, we got another great conference preview show on the Full Court Press Podcast, a college basketball experience. If you like the podcast, you love the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, I need a haircut. I'm getting a haircut this weekend. Press the subscribe button. So we got another great conference preview like they all are, Sammy. And this one's interesting because this was already a good conference. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get even stronger next year with the addition of two very good teams from another conference. We got Coach Pecora, who says he's 85 years old, from the Quinnipiac Bobcats, and we got Coach Casey for the Fairfield Stags. They say they're the elder statesman, but Coach Casey looks like he's still in college. So, welcome to the Full Court Press Podcast, boys.
Thanks, guys. That's clean living on Chris's part. I can tell you that. That's right.
Yeah.
Clean living. He looks young, and his wife and two beautiful daughters keep him healthy, and they take care of the old man.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you'd think this year in college basketball, especially with the no off season, would have aged some coaches, but you guys are looking young and dapper as always.
Appreciate that. You know, it's the season really never ends.
No.
Now, Tommy knows this. It never used to be like that. 20 years ago, you had some pockets here and there where you could get a break and get a little bit of sanity, spend some time with your family. That's really difficult to do now. It's with the guys on campus 8 weeks during the summer. As soon as they come back, workouts start. You don't really get that much of a pocket to do that. But for me, I enjoy that part of it. I'm in coaching to coach and to be involved in all the aspects of coaching. So if that's what it is right now and that's the world we live in, then we have to do a good job with it and adapt to it.
Yeah. We come from a time, Case and I, when we started in this business, you talked to coaches our age and everyone got married in either May, June, or August, because those were 3 months where you knew you were going to have a little bit of a break and things would slow down. But I don't know when these young guys are going to find time to get married now, because we go 12 months a year. But
they're getting married during games because they got the crowd there and it's cheaper.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're right about that. That might not be a bad move. But look, you adjust. You talk to the players constantly about adjusting during the course of the game, and obviously Chris and I have adjusted during the course of our careers, both having been head coaches, then been assistants, then back as head coaches, and you just keep grinding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how are those kind of fall workouts looking for you guys? It's you guys both kind of have, everyone's kind of rearranging rosters, right? Early summer, throughout the summer, figuring out what that looks like. What are you guys seeing in your own practices so far?
Well, first official for us was last Monday. And then previous to that, our players came back right after Labor Day, and we got some workouts in. You're limited to hours, a certain amount of hours during that period. So we got some workouts then. I thought the summer was big for us. We had 9 new guys on scholarship in the summer. So I thought the summer was important for us to, be in the weight room and get stronger, spend some time expanding guys' games, but also getting in some of what we're going to do and how we're going to play. Because once September hits, you got practices, but you're limited time before you're playing that first game. And with so many new guys, I thought that was important. So I feel like that's given us a little bit of payback right now. And we're only 8 official practices in, but I feel like we're a little further along, which is helping us right now. We're able to do a few more things in practice and understand more of what we're doing and how we want to play.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, the way you manage this 12-month-a-year basketball season like that we're talking about is there's so many different creative ways to do it. My mindset is just trying to keep fresh minds, fresh legs. And I think that guys can get burnt out physically, and they definitely can get burnt out mentally. So what we decide to do during our workouts, whether they be in season, off season, I personally don't get involved on the floor very much in the summer. I meet with my staff. I talk to them about everything we need to get done out there on the floor, but I don't want the guys to hear my voice 12 months a year. So, on occasion I'll step down there and have a bit of a meltdown, but other than that, I mean, and I also want my assistant coaches to become better coaches. The most frustrating thing for me as an assistant was when I worked for a number of guys, and with a couple of them, you just didn't get to coach much. The head coach dominated practice, and that's cool. That's a head coaching decision. But I think it's part of my job as a head coach is to develop these young guys and allow them to become better coaches. And I was lucky when I worked for Bob McKillop and Rolly Massimino and Jay Wright. I was coaching every day on the floor, and that made me a better coach and allowed me to become a head coach and then have some success. So I keep that in mind, and I think it's important for them to be locked in a little bit more come September and much more come October now, and as we get into the hearing my voice more.
Yeah.
Coach Pecora, you guys finished the regular season first in conference, right? You don't win the conference championship, but then you guys bring back 4 starters, a lot of experience. What's the mentality kind of with the team and how they're kind of, you guys are picked by a lot of people to finish first again this year, and led by Savion and Amari, and some new guys who will get some playing time as well. How are those guys handling some of that pressure?
Hey, Coach, before you answer this, we've actually got you ranked in the top 13 of conference, just so you know.
It's nice. It's good to know. Listen, I've been to the mountaintop, and I've been at the bottom of that mountain. I spent some time in Fordham, and you talk about that, we'd lose by 8, and it was like we won some nights in the Atlantic 10 when I was at Fordham because we played our asses off and just came up a little short. But, look, I think we've had a great mindset. And part of it, and I'm sure Case can relate the same way, by the run St. Peter's went on by beating us and then the next day getting Fairfield, it's unfinished business. So, the first day of practice this year, we had shirts made up and it just says in big letters on the front, finish. And they've had a great off-season mindset. I really have not had to, because we brought so many veterans back. I really haven't had to discuss or motivate them in that regard. They've played with an edge and competed with an edge throughout the summer, spring, summer, and fall. And I think that's because of the upset in the semis of the MAAC tournament. We also all know that in mid-major basketball, tournaments are Russian roulette. There's one bullet in the gun, and you get hot at the right time, or you get certain circumstances come together, foul trouble, whatever it might be. They can hurt your team, and all of a sudden you have to go home. And then to make it even worse, last year is in their glorious intellect, they make up this NIT concept where they're not going to let mid-major champions in, and they can't find major conference teams that want to play in the NIT. Where for programs like ours, Case or myself or anyone in our league, the NIT is still a big deal, or it once was, and that was a shame. It was all part of some of the decisions that have been made at the highest level lately. That they can talk all they want about, and we're getting political here, but they could be talk all they want about how it's about all the athletes, and it's the schools in the top 5 conferences, and they're just trying to do whatever they can to protect themselves, to make sure those 5 conferences don't just walk away and start their own gig. So it was hard, but I thought it motivated our guys in a great way, to get back to your point, to keep our guys focused in the off season. And we feel like there's unfinished business and we need to go and prove ourselves again this year.
Yeah. Do you think the NIT will change back to what it used to be, or do you think this is kind of the new norm for the NIT?
Well, I think after it was embarrassing what happened last year.
Oh yeah, like St. John's said no. I mean, there was a whole bunch of.
I think there were over 20 schools. Yeah,
there were at least 7 Power 5.
Yeah. So I mean, a lesson learned or what? or are they going to just tell the commissioners of those leagues, your team's got to accept these bids? I don't know if that's going to fly either. So I would hope that they would do that, but I would also think that maybe they would have made that decision by now, and it wouldn't be something that comes out in the middle of the year. But once again, that might be wishful thinking on our part as coaches.
But it's interesting because 7 out of the 11 teams in your conference last year were above 500 in conference. Okay, 7 and 11. You're adding Merrimack and Sacred Heart. All right, so you could, your league is only going to get stronger, whether it's Ken Palm or just the competition. So the whole thing with the NIT is if you're 15-5 or 14-6, Coach Casey, like you guys were with the Stags, and you guys don't win conference because you just, you're down one game. I mean, you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old individuals. We both played. I coach Division I, college sports, so I know how it works. You've got to get these kids motivated for 4 days in a row, and that's difficult. But how if you've got this body of work where you're playing every game you could lose in conference, you're not going to reward someone? I mean, 15-5, you don't even get into the NIT. I guess I just don't understand that rhetoric.
Yeah, I think a couple things to kind of piggyback what Tommy said. I think it should go back because I think there needs to be some rewards for the mid-major programs that are able to fight. If you look at the history of our league, this will be my 20th year coaching in the MAAC in some role, some way, shape, or form. Our league is a great league every year, and the bottom team beats the top team. Our league has not historically been a top-heavy league where, there's the top 4 or 5, and then, the bottom 3 or 4 are always going to be, 2 and 18. That's not the case in our league. And that's why you see in our league tournament, many times the lower seeds end up winning the conference tournament. So I think there should be some reward for that. Tommy's team had a fantastic year, and they don't get that reward, and they should have. Now, that being said, I don't think it's going to go back, even though it should. I feel like the NCAA is doing everything they can to try to keep the NCAA together. And to do that, they need to make those higher level conferences and teams happy. Otherwise, as Tommy alluded to, they're just going to separate because they really don't need the NCAA. But I think your point is a great point, especially in a league like ours. You look at our league every year, the bottom teams beat the top teams. If you don't come ready to play, you're going to lose to teams. There's a lot of good coaches in this league. And some of those teams that aren't quite as good during the course of the year, they still have good players. They're maybe just on the younger side and a little less experienced. But those kids are in the MAAC thinking they're better, and they play with a chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. So you have to show up every game in order to have a good year in your conference. And I do think it should be rewarded. Tommy's team should have been in the NIT last year.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be interesting. You talked about coaches and teams. I mean, Canisius brought in a new coach, Coach Christian, who you guys both know. Siena went with former guest Jerry McNamara from Syracuse. I mean, the conference is only getting better. What are you guys, I guess, looking forward to, or maybe some of the teams that maybe didn't have the best year last year? What are you guys looking forward to in the MAAC conference this year?
Well, I just think, look, Jimmy Christian's a seasoned veteran coach. He's coached at the highest level. Another New York guy like Case and myself. He's a hell of a coach. And when I talked to him at the conference meetings, he said, look, we basically went and got experienced transfers and junior college players. And, they're going to put men on the floor, and they're going to be really well coached. And it wouldn't surprise me. I think the preseason polls are wonderful accolades and all of that stuff. But in the day and age we're living and coaching in the MAAC conference, that stuff goes out the window. So much parity. It wouldn't surprise me at all if teams that people thought were going to be at the bottom of the league end up right at the top. And that's true. I mean, with the transfer portal, I don't know half the kids that were coming into other places where years ago you knew everyone because they were all coming out of high school. You had seen them. They were mid-major level kids for the most part. So you would evaluated them. But that's all going out the window, and then you try to bring in the chemistry piece to all of that. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think there's going to be great parity in the league, and you better lace them up every night and be ready to go, or all these preseason polls will go out the window.
Mm-hmm. Coach Casey, can you kind of talk a little bit about that chemistry piece of bringing in through the transfer portal? I mean, you're bringing in, I think it's 6 guys from the transfer portal. 5 of them have really good D1 experience, right? How does that chemistry look so far this year? And, like as a coach, like how do you kind of manage that early on in the season?
Well, I don't think you're truly going to know it till the games hit. I think right now, if you're struggling with chemistry, it's a difficult time of the year to struggle with that, because right now there's no minutes being delved out. There's no shot attempts being delved out. There's no substitutions. There's no wins and losses. So this has to be a time where your team is working hard and showing some chemistry and showing a good culture. I think what you do is, and it's not foolproof. It's not an exact science, but you really have to do the best you can to research a guy's makeup. I think that's really important. What's his makeup? What's his ability to handle adversity? Can you coach him? Is he going to be an everyday guy? These are really, really important things, and they're part of the talent evaluation of it. I always say that, you could be on a bad team and average 18 a game. That doesn't mean you're a good player, and it doesn't mean you're a bad player. Somebody's got to score the points, So I think you do the best you can to find out a guy's makeup, who's around him, what his family situation is, who's advising him. And I think you really have to pay attention to that. Now, that being said, guys, I don't think you truly know that until you coach the kid. I think that's when you really find it out. But I do think you have to do the best you can to figure that part of it out, along with the idea that he can play the way you want to play. He brings a talent level to it. He brings an intensity level to it. I think all those things are part of it. And you have to figure that part of it out. And our guys right now, I like where we're at chemistry-wise. I think our culture is good. We really spend a lot of time in practice making sure guys are talking and I'm a big with speaking directly to teammates. Like, I don't like generic enthusiasm. Let's go, guys, and a hand clap. I want direct speech to teammates. I think that's important. So we spend a lot of time paying attention to that. And right now it's good for us, and I've been happy with it. So we'll see where that leads.
Yeah.
I agree with Chris on all counts. I think the hard thing in the recruiting process is compared to what it once was. And, I keep talking about the good old days, I guess, but this is like speed dating compared to years ago where you got on a kid as a sophomore. You went and saw him play multiple times with his high school and AAU team. You had a relationship with the coach. You found out about his family. That's kind of out the window very often. Not always, but very often now. And then I think on the floor, the same thing comes into play. Like, if you don't have a bunch of guys coming back that are major contributors or leaders, natural leaders that the teammates respect, you're almost flipping captains. You could be flipping captains every year,
Do you even have captains anymore?
I'm sorry?
Do you even have captains anymore?
Well, we're lucky this year we do, but I went through seasons where I used to have game captains. Whoever was practicing their ass off that week, I'd send them out. Yeah. And it was made it even more competitive to have a great practice and a great week. And I've had walk-ons be our captains in certain years if they were deserving of it. So I think the whole mindset has changed, but we adjust and we move forward. That's what we do.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, kind of a word of advice I can tell you, since I've been in your position 30 years ago and 25 years ago or 20 years, whatever it was. If you get a kid and you don't get him, all you got to say is, hey, if it doesn't work out, call me.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's what the world's coming to, right? I mean, we've heard that from multiple other coaches.
Right.
And there was and I'm curious, like with the way it's going now in college basketball and recruiting. I mean, you used to rely on a lot of your friends, colleagues, to get information on kids, especially if they're transferring. Now it's like, I don't even know if you really need to, because there's just so many transfers.
I still think you have to. We call, and I don't think a lot of guys, well, I shouldn't say a lot of guys. There's some guys that don't. Like, we had guys go in the transfer portal and end up in places, and some of them I got calls on from programs they ended up in, and some of them I didn't get calls on. So everybody does it a different way. But I still think, obviously if you know somebody that's real close to the kid and is going to give you honest answers, you have to make that call. I still think even if you're calling someone you don't know, you have to make the call. And I always think they're not going to give you everything, but I think by the tone of their voice, you can kind of get a feel for, yeah, let's move on this or let's not move on it. So I do think it's important to do that. We've done it on every guy that we've gotten in the portal, and every guy that's transferred. Now, whether we're right or not, we'll see. Make your best value judgment on those. But I do think it's important to do that. And, Tommy's right. I mean, Tommy, do you even do home visits anymore?
I can't remember the last one. And
I can't either. And that used to be a staple in recruiting. You'd have your presentation together. You would get in early. You'd sit with the parents. And it's too bad that stuff's gone in some way because, that you would go and they'd make dinner for you. You'd sit at the house. You'd have dinner. I mean, it was really a nice thing in recruiting. And that's kind of disappeared now. And as Tommy said, it is speed dating. But, that being said, you have to adapt to it, and you have to find a way to do well in it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it really hurts you when you go do the banquet tour because some of the best stories you had at home, right? We can't talk about most of those on the air, but it was always an adventure when you were going into kids' homes, but it was a great way to spend time with them and the amount of preparation. I remember as an assistant coach working for Coach Massimino, I mean, the amount of preparation that went into the home visit, and then to watch him perform as a head coach and sell his wares and sell the university's wares. It was an educational experience for me as part of his staff. I think it was also educational for the family. I mean, it was just a great way to connect, as Kate said, with the family. But all of that's gone by the wayside. Like, now we do it this way. Obviously, we do a lot of Zooms and then hopefully bring them on campus and get to spend time with them on campus. But as it changes, we must change. And that's how you do it if you want to survive.
Well, the problem with it is it's like you see these kids, or we've had stories and heard stories, and you see kids transfer multiple 3-4 times. So it's like, why put all the time and energy if in the back of my mind it's like, hey, I might only be there for 6 to 9 months.
Right.
And that's the problem. But it seems like you say speed dating, it almost looks like the average recruiting process is 6 to 9 minutes. Like, hey, there's no like relationship building anymore, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we recruit programs as much as players. So if you can go into programs where there's great coaching and leadership and there's people that care about them, that obviously is going to help the process on every level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good storylines in the MAAC this year, and I mean, one of them is like I love Savion Lewis, right? Like what he's done. I mean, did you do a home visit for him back in 2018?
Well, Savion, I'll tell you, I kid around. I say I knew Savion when he was a little boy, and now I know him and he's a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
Savion high school.
He's a seventh-year player, right? But he's
I taught his high school coach in junior high when I was a teacher on Long Island, Pete Basil. And I went in and saw Pete's team play for Pete, and Save was a sophomore. And I saw him. He was a little jet zipping around, and I eventually recruited him. So he was 15 then. He's 22 now. So we've had a 7 or 8 year relationship, and the whole thing is so different, And I think the other thing, the crazy thing for me is that no one from the NCAA or the media are standing up and saying, here's how graduation rates have been affected by not having to sit a year. I mean, we're educators, right? We all got into this because we want to educate while we're coaching basketball. 90% of the guys care about their guys graduating. I haven't heard a peep from anybody about how that's going to be affected, and am I getting a meaningful degree? And we all know when you transfer, you never take all the credits with you. So I mean, the whole thing is so hypocritical of what we're supposed to be in here doing while we're playing basketball. We're educating these guys. We should be educating them. We should be preparing them for a successful life and whatever they choose to do, because they're not going to all go on and be pros. Our level guys go play in Europe and have a cup of coffee over there. And if they're blessed, they do get in the league, but that's so friggin' rare. So what are we doing here? Are we preparing these guys for long-term success? Where do guys go on alumni day? When you've been to 3 schools, like, what do? Do you go back to your last school? But you're only there a year, but you were somewhere else 3 years before. Like,
we had that conversation. How do you figure out 1,000-point scorers?
yeah.
I mean, that was always a big thing. And you 1,000-point scorers get in the Hall of Fame. How do you figure that out?
Right.
Divided by 5, coach.
It's very, very difficult to figure. What's the school's going to look at? If the kid is transferred and you're his 3rd school, and in his junior year he hits 1,000 total points aggregate, right, are you putting him up on the banner as a 1,000-point scorer at your school? These are the questions it creates. What about Hall of Fame? Hall of Fame was always about the legacy, what you did over the span of your time at that university. So how do you treat that now? If a kid has one great year for you, is he a Hall of Famer, even though he came in for 1 year, then transferred out to a 3rd school? These are all things that, are going to have to be figured out. Hopefully the transfer portal will quell a little bit with the extra COVID year being gone now, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to quell a lot, but I think it may tone it down just a little bit.
Yeah, I think Savion Lewis has about 3 more years for you, coach. I think he has 3 more years eligibility, but it's funny, and you guys have been in this game a long time. It was always student athlete. You're a student and then you're an athlete. Now it's just athlete. Like, there's no more student. And you're right. Like, how do these, like, 8, and I'm not trying to pick on AJ Storr. He's transferred 4 times in 4 years. He's been at 4 different schools.
He also went to 3 different high schools before that.
Okay, well, I didn't want to bring that up, Sam. I was talking about the college career, okay? He's been in 7 schools in 7 years. Like, I'm sorry, I transferred, and I lost credits. I wanted to go to St. Joe's, and I was going to lose, like, 32 credits. I didn't go. How does that work now? I mean, does it even matter? I mean, are all these kids just automatically eligible? Like, if you go below a 2.0, you're still eligible? I mean, is there any rules with that anymore?
Well, I think once you're paying kids $1 million a year to come play for you, are they going to give you a hard time about the little things that used to be, part of NCAA rules? I think that it kind of everyone's just throwing their hands in the air with that. Yeah. Guys can pick up, extra credits on the internet. They can pick up extra credits over a summer to get eligible at various schools. And we've always known, look, in our business, you always knew what schools could get things done in that regard and what schools couldn't, even years ago. But it's obviously a living organism, and everyone's doing it differently, and it's changing day to day. And you have a lot of creative guys figuring out, creative ways to get around a rule or make it a simpler process. But the whole idea of not sitting a year, that's what used to temper guys from making that transfer. Yeah, you're not playing much, you're pissed. You go in and see the coach, and coach says, listen, man, you're going to be on the floor next year, trust me. And then you're saying to yourself, well, if I go there, I got to sit a year, I'm not going to play for a full year, and it tended to keep guys around. I get the concept, the other big issue was if coaches leave. Well, if I don't know how many players are out there with multiple children and a mortgage and a wife that they're taking care of. But when an adult male or female makes a business decision, I think it's a little bit different than a 19 or 20-year-old making a decision. Mm-hmm. I think if a young guy is coming in as a freshman and a coach leaves, well, maybe that's an opportunity for him to reopen his recruitment. But if you're at a school, I think you should be choosing the school for a lot of good reasons too, and not just the coach. Yeah. But once again, I'm sure everyone's saying that's just an old guy, spewing old man thoughts. But I think it's all going to come out in years to come. You're going to have a lot of guys who got a lot of NIL money driving old 10-year-old fancy cars, and they don't have college degrees. And this is what I got out of it. And look, I was no different. For Case and I, if we had $20, we pissed that away over the weekend.
Over a week and over a couple hours for Sam and I.
And we were going to quarter beers at the Bordy Barn back then. But it's at that age to handle that kind of money and to not have people taking advantage of you. I just think the whole thing's kind of broken.
Yeah.
Coaches, we do a little thing called the shot clock on the Full Court Press podcast. LT is going to fire off 5 or 6 quick questions. They should be pretty easy. Maybe they're one words. Maybe they lead to a short story, but the platform's yours.
Let's make them easy. You're talking to two guys that
I know. There might be a trivia question.
This is Sunnyside. This is Sunnyside, Queens, and Queens Village here. We didn't, you are not going to head in high school. Trust me.
Make them easy, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is the best official in the MAAC?
Oh boy,
Jeff Anderson.
That's a good one. Jeff is a good one. I'll go along with that one.
Okay. One word to describe the MAAC conference in basketball.
Competitive.
Man, Casey, I have to go first.
I'm doing all right here, Tommy. That's not bad. Can I be done now?
You wish you did this well on the SATs.
Can I be done now?
Me too. I think it's expanding right now. So it's interesting and expanding.
Do you like that's going from 11 to 13 teams?
No, it cuts down our percentage of winning a championship and going to the NCAA tournament. I think it's all insurance. It just becomes an insurance policy for conferences when they expand because they're worried about other people jumping somewhere else.
Right. Okay. Biggest misconception of the Metro Atlantic Basketball Conference?
I don't know if there is one. Everyone I talk to really respects the league, especially in the Northeast region. People that are basketball people have hold the MAAC in high regard because of the players that have come through. So I don't know if I have one there, to be honest with you.
Well, I got a quick story. So a couple of years ago, Coach Pitino takes the Iona job, and I used to work at his camp at St. Dominic's High School 100 years ago when I was in college, and we've been good friends for a long time. So he calls and he says, "Hey, Tommy, I want to talk to you about hiring one of your assistants, Dwayne Lee." And I say, "Coach, we're in the same league." And he says, "We are?" He was still down in Florida. He had taken the Iona job, and I think he thought the MAAC was still all Catholic schools, which it was when Case and I were in college. It was a bunch of Catholic schools and West Point. So he was straight up. He goes, "We are?" I go, "Yeah, we are." And he goes, "Well, I still like to talk to him, But so I go back to when this was the league of Fordham and Manhattan and Iona and those battles. I mean, I remember
LaSalle was in there.
LaSalle, and LaSalle was putting 3 pros on the floor, and I would go to Iona Fordham games when they both had great teams in the early '80s, and basically at the jump ball, 10 guys would be rolling around on the floor. They'd get that over with. It was like a hockey game, and then they would start and play the basketball game. So it's always been an ultra competitive league, but obviously the dynamic of it has changed.
Okay.
So you actually go down to Queens and play against Coach Pitino in November.
Yes,
right? Nice
enough for him to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Toughest gym to play in the MAAC?
Last year for us, the best away crowd was the Mount St. Mary's game on the road. That was it was their senior night, but it was sold out. It was packed, and it was a great atmosphere. That was that one, and I would say, Tommy, the game we played with you guys, that was a national TV game. That place was packed too. It was sold out, and I thought that was a great atmosphere. I would say I would put those 2 road games on equal footing for us, with what we experienced last year.
Yeah, I agree with Chris on our games. I think we're 25 minutes apart. We both have great fan bases, so they travel. It's an easy trip. We're always going to have sellouts when we play each other. I think, look, the Buffalo trip is always a tough one, man. You go up there, it's always snowing a little bit sideways for 48 hours or 72 hours when you're up there. Both are tough little gyms to play in. And you've really got to be focused to win on the road anywhere, but especially I think that trip can be a challenge.
Yeah, you should talk to the coaches to see if maybe you can play outdoors at the Bills game like they do with hockey. Those gyms will be real nice for you, Coach.
We got stuck up there for a couple of days because of snow. We were actually supposed to play Canisius on a Sunday. We ended up not playing until Tuesday. And we were stuck up there in the hotel for a couple of days and could not practice.
Yeah.
We had guys in the hallway doing calisthenics just to keep Keep them moving instead of just sitting around the hotel room all day.
I'm from Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and for years we would send snow removal equipment down to Buffalo because they just couldn't handle it. But here nor there. Best dressed conference coach.
Oh, it's got to be Chris.
And I'm not a wardrobe guy. You guys are always sharp. You go with the jackets.
Well,
we go with the quarter zips.
Yeah, like everyone went to the quarter zips during COVID, and when I became the head coach, I just told the guys we're not going to be doing that anymore. And my AD said, "What's the mindset behind that?" And I was a gym teacher for 5 years, a health and phys ed teacher, and my thing was always, you don't get paid like a gym teacher, don't dress like one. And that's what I told our guys. Now I told my assistants going to help them get head coaching jobs, which may not be true, but it was just a smooth way to get them into getting dressed. When I started in the business, when I was working for Coach Massimino, he took great pride in dressing for every game. Now, by the end of the game, his T-shirt, the tail of his shirt rather, was out, and he was screaming at referees. But, we took pride in going to games and dressing like businessmen. When we went to UNLV as a staff, Jay Wright, myself, him, Darwin Cook, we had to go to work every day in shirts and ties. And people at Vegas were looking at us like we were out of our minds. They all went tennis shorts and T-shirts. They were like, "What are you East Coast guys doing? You look like this. You look like you're in the FBI." But it was a mindset and a professionalism to it. And I think you're representing a university. So for me, we don't wear ties, but we wear sports coats and slacks and shoes.
Yeah, I'll give you a Bashir Mason on that. He's always sharp on the sideline. Okay. So I'll give you that one.
Yeah, he does. Most animated coach on the sidelines in your conference.
Greg Paulus.
Oh shit.
In a good way. Guy's got energy level. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how that the energy is one thing, but then acting like a maniac, you really don't know who that's going to be till February when someone's having a really rough year. And then all of a sudden guys they'll go off the reservation a little bit. I think there's so many guys that I think for the most part, our conference are pretty well behaved. I've been in other conferences where it's just when I coached against the Hurley brothers, they were both at half court as soon as the timeout was called, and they were both yelling at the refs. When I was in Fordham, I remember looking over, and Danny and Bobby were both out there lighting up one of the referees. So I've seen some wild men during games. I don't think our conference is over the top in that regard. I think Kevin Baggett rides them hard, and he coaches hard, and that's okay. Look, those guys are working for their money just like we are. So as long as you don't go over the top, with certain buzzwords, getting on them is okay, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Which conference team led the conference in most fouls called per game that were actually called?
That were actually called. They took us out of a tough situation there, Case.
You go first, Tommy.
Who fouled the most in our conference last year?
What team?
I would say the most physical team was Ryder.
What do you say, Coach? Coach Casey?
I don't have any data on that. I'm going to give you probably either Ryder. They're always very physical and play hard. St. Peter's always very physical and play hard. So I'm going to give you maybe one of those two teams.
Okay, you're correct. St. Peter's with 19.3 calls against them. Who had the least amount called on them? Which coach you knew how to really work the sidelines and the coach and the officials the best in your conference? Lowest fouls called.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is technique that's taught as well. It's not just working the refs. I think, a lot of coaches have gotten very good at understanding what gets called and what doesn't, and they practice it.
Wasn't us, was it?
Nope. You were 12th, actually. You were 14.6. Quinnipiac, it wasn't you for sure. You were 5th with 16.3.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. Mount St. Mary's.
The Jaspers. Manhattan with 13.9. So
that's a tough stat too, because different teams play different ways, and when you have a higher number of possessions, you're going to have more fouls called.
Yep.
So I think some of that depends on,
Yeah.
I think you have to compare that to possessions in a game too.
Yep. Or as a coach once said, they don't play defense.
That was the other thing. If nobody gets near anybody, then you can't foul. So.
Yeah, that was Coach Becker, right, at Vermont.
Yeah, at Vermont. Yeah,
like, we just want the ball back. They can shoot all they want. It's all good. He was averaging like 11 fouls a game or something like that.
Yeah, something ridiculous. 10.9, something ridiculous.
Is that right?
Yeah. Sammy, finish him off, boss.
Yeah, coaches, we appreciate you coming on the show. A little MAAC preview. I'm going to turn it over to you guys last minute of the show. Anything you guys want to share to the Quinnipiac or Fairfield boosters, alumni, students? Coach Pecora, let's start with you.
Look, for our student body here, they got engaged last year and coming to a number of games. This, both Case and I are so lucky with the arenas that we have, the support that we have here on campus. And it's part of the complete college experience to get out to games and have some fun. And as I said, both of our games were off the charts with great crowds, and I think it's something that we continue to build on the mid-major level, and get the community involved as well as the student body. So we're excited about another year of having good success, and if you stay healthy and we play the way we're capable of, we think we could have a great year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback what Tommy's saying a little bit. I really thought there was an electric atmosphere in our arena last year. And I really liked the fact that we had three components to that. We had students, we had people from the campus, and we had a ton of community members and their family come out, which I really, really liked to see those little kids running around and rooting for our team and our players. That was great. So I would appeal to our fan base to bring a friend and let's sell out every game. And then as far as our team goes, I'm really enjoying these guys so far. I think, one of the things we talk about with the transfers and having a new team every year, I try to look at the positive side of that for myself, which is, you have to really keep coaching and be sharp, because you have to reteach everything. You're not dealing with, 8, 9 returning players that know everything you're doing and how they want to do it. There's a positive to that too. But for me personally, the idea of having a new team every year, I think that helps keep me sharp and helps me keep coaching and finding better and newer ways to teach things and get guys to do what you want them to do.
Yeah. Well, coaches, we thank you so much. You're going to stick on for one more second just so we can upload this fine episode. We really appreciate it. Check out Quinnipiac and Fairfield and the tough MAAC that's just getting bigger and better. And like Coach Casey says, bring a friend. But I think Coach Pecora would say bring friends. Friends, plural. Let's get friends. It's going to be great basketball. We're really excited to see it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the Full Court Press Podcast, the College Basketball Experience. We'll be back next week or next time or next day with another conference preview show on the press.